because I think there's many elements to it. There's perspective, because if things aren't physically or objectively as bad, say for example hunger, so we don't live in a third world country where we struggle for food, but subjectively we all suffer with fucking mental health issues. Life is terrible, but we have all of the basic needs covered in the vast majority of cases in this country, compared to Africa, where they don't struggle with as many mental health issues and stuff like that, but they have real struggles like food and shelter and being killed by disease and stuff.
Well, even that mental health aspect thing, because we are looked after with our basic needs, yet there's still suffering. So again, this idea of just constantly suffering, regardless of kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
So what is because people have different answers for the way you could go of what you should be doing, but there's suffering in
what do you mean what you should be doing?
Like, whatever it might be.
To mitigate your suffering.
Yeah. Like you be more traditional or be religious or doing something, whatever. But there's suffering in every single aspect of life for every single person.
Yes.
Which is just mental when you think about it.
Why?
Because you're...
It's only mental if you think that there should not be suffering.
Well, I think that's the whole point though, isn't it? I think the whole point is like, when you are struggling in whatever aspect that is, it's like, oh, it's really difficult. And then when you're not struggling, things are going well, it's like, yeah, it's brilliant. But the struggle is coming back around, and that struggle that you're in right now, you could get out of. So it's just this perpetual cycle and constantness all the time. There's no end to it.
Should there be an end to it?
Yeah, no, well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, whether there should or there shouldn't.
I'm being a bit facetious here, right? I'm asking these questions. They're like leading questions because I don't have the answer. But there's a lot of these questions asked all the time. What is the meaning of life is the obvious one. Why is there suffering? Why do bad things happen?
Yeah.
Why do bad things happen to good people? All this kind of stuff. And I think if we constantly focus on those questions, we'll never get anywhere. I think a shift in perspective, on the suffering, because the suffering doesn't change, but how you view the suffering changes. There's a quote, God, Jill's going to kill me. She always says to me, don't mention quotes unless you can actually quote the quote. She's dead right. But it essentially means that there will be pain, but whether you suffer or not is up to you. So there's always going to be pain and struggle, but the suffering part is completely up to you.
Well, that's like that Buddhist philosophy of the first arrow and the second arrow. So the first arrow is the pain of whatever it is, and then the second arrow is the narrative or the story of that pain.
That you tell yourself, yeah.
Yeah, so you can wallow in that if you want to, or you can accept for what it is and try to take responsibility or try to deal with it or something. But I suppose what I'm trying to get at though is just this idea of that first arrow, and the pain might be different. There might be a different arrow for each person, but those arrows are being flung at us forever.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Because that is life. So the first arrow is life.
Yes.
It is the hunger, it is the drought, it is the mental health, it is the car crash, it is the broken leg, it is the people dying. That is the first arrow. It's inevitable. That is just how things are.
That's life.
Not good, not bad. It just is. And then the second arrow that you mentioned there is your response to that, and that's the suffering. So we have control to a certain degree over how we respond to these things. And this is really interesting actually, because Gabor Mate is doing the rounds of all the podcasts at the moment. So he was on Rogan, he was on Dive CEO, was he on Chris Williamson? I don't know, but he's doing a few of them anyway. And he's obviously very well versed in trauma. His big thing is trauma. And he would describe trauma as not the thing that has happened to you, but your response to the thing that has happened to you. So it's not the thing. So it's not and now, I would like to temper this a little bit because there's some things I just can't get out of my head as trauma, like child abuse and stuff like that. If you're abused as a child, that's really traumatic. But he would then say the response you have after that and how that's dealt with and managed is the trauma, as opposed to the thing itself. The thing itself is just a thing. So the way we were kind of describing this here, the thing is the first arrow. But how you respond to the first arrow is the trauma. The second arrow is the trauma, the perspective, the subjectiveness of it all, as opposed to the objective thing that has just happened. And why I think thinking about it this way is more helpful than just saying what is the point or what's the meaning of life and how do we be happy and all that kind of stuff, is we're not trying to find a situation where none of this stuff happens, because that doesn't exist. A life where it's easy, that doesn't exist. What we are trying to do is manage that second arrow. We're trying to figure, I think that's much more helpful. How do we change how we perceive the things that happen to us that allow us to be more at peace with them? That's how I like to think about it. because then you're in more control about how you feel. And ultimately it comes down to how we feel. Like you can have people who are starving. Like I often talk about this, and a lot of people I know would have traveled to the likes of Vietnam and East Asia and stuff like that. I've been to Africa, and the poor people there are so happy because they're not dealing with crises of identity and all that kind of stuff. They're dealing with real life stuff like food and water shortage and disease and stuff like that. But they're really, really happy to see other people and to share and to give. And in a lot of cases, not in every case. And I always wonder, like, why? If they are like on the bottom rung and we're way, way higher in terms of our basic needs being met, why are we less happy and open and sharing and communicable and all this kind of stuff? And it's their perspective is different. They have everything not that they have everything they need, but they're just more grateful for the things that they do have because of the perspective that they have on the things that they get, as opposed to us who are not grateful at all for anything that we get because we have everything. So it's a perspective piece as opposed to a physical objective piece. I'm saying lots of words here now.
No, it's good though, because you're saying there also about the first arrow and the second arrow, and Mark Manson calls it like type 1 pain, type 2 pain. So it's a similar idea. But I think what helps with the second arrow and the narrative and the story you tell yourself is the experience of life. And I think that's where maturity comes in. As you experience more arrows in your life, you begin to reflect and learn and ultimately have more experience, so you can begin to really influence that second arrow more and more. And
yes,
that's what I kind of realized just growing older. Like I'm in my mid-30s now, and I've just experienced life more. I've had much more difficult times over the last, say, 10 years than I would have had the previous years before that, you know? And I think once you're able to work through them, reflect on them, the stories you tell yourself, the experiences that you do have, it's easier to start to change the story and narrative of that second arrow.
Well, you have more perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
You have more perspective. I'm gonna first of all welcome everyone. We're in the podcast. We keep doing this. We're in the podcast now. First of all, I'm gonna welcome Mr. Brian O'Loughlin back to the Prymal podcast.
Hello, sir.
Thank you for coming back again. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And second of all, bear with me for 30 seconds. I just sat down to have our cup of tea and have a chat before we roll this podcast, so we'll make sure the audio is recording so people can actually hear this.
Okay. And why do you keep talking here? Because you're going to start flipping the old camera now.
We're good. And now also I'll apologise to the people if this visually doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, because I am actually doing the editing live in studio now as well, whereas usually I either have someone doing it or I do it afterwards.
So you've never done this before in person?
Not in this way. And the whole point is to try and save me time afterwards. Because sometimes I have somebody here. Orla was here, Fish was here, a couple of people were here in the booth switching for me. And sometimes I don't, and when I don't, I have to edit it myself afterwards, which just takes so much time. And I'm a very busy man at the moment. Very busy man.
Well, you genuinely are a busy man.
I am busy, yeah, but I'm trying to minimise the time it takes me to be able to produce more content for people. Because as people might have noticed, I talk about consistency all the time. And with a lot of things I am consistent. My own podcast, I tend to get to the end of the week, I'm like, shit, I've no time. What's more important? Serving the clients, being with my family, or doing a podcast? And the podcast is usually last, but I love doing it. So this is a little test to see, is there a way of me speeding up that workflow when I don't have somebody available to come in and do the switching for me. So if all of a sudden the camera's on Brian while I'm talking, or it's on me while Brian's talking, that's the reason. But the audio will still be good. So.
Well, that's it, because we're saying there about the second arrow and maturity and experience. So you're making a change here now because of the bullshit experience you've had in the past of not doing something because of not having someone there to do it for you.
Yes.
The switching. I
like that little segue. You tied that in nicely there. You're getting good at this podcast, though.
But that is good, though. Like, that's the whole point, though, isn't it? Of something like this. Like, much easier for you to say, per me, I haven't got time, I'm not going to do it. Or find an alternative solution that you might not be very good at right now. I'm looking at the camera, say he's not going to be great at it. But through practice and repetition, this will get better and it becomes the norm. And now you can actually do something you want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So after that that was actually a nice way to start the podcast there. On that point, actually, because we're talking about perspective, today I'll have mentioned in the intro what we're going to talk about, and we'll only really know by the time we get to the end of it. So you'll know now, listening to this podcast, what we're going to be talking about. But we have a couple of topics we want to touch on today. One of which is, speaking of perspective, a Hormozy quote I sent to you this morning. And there was another one as well. What was the other one? There was another, nobody cares. There was another piece. We'll find it anyway as we go. But essentially, I sent you over a quote this morning, and I'm going to flick to you now while I go on my phone and try and find the exact quote so Jill doesn't absolutely murder me for not having the quote. But what did you take when I sent you this quote from Hormozy this morning?
Well, you mentioned about perspective, and that's 100% what I took from it. Obviously, Hormozy is an entrepreneur, so he was specifically talking to us as entrepreneurs.
Maybe give people a bit of background on Hormozy first, because some people might know who he is.
Yeah, well, he's an entrepreneur in America who has, helps businesses above, I think it's 10 million a year or something to scale, essentially.
Acquisition.com is his company.
Yeah, and but his philosophy and his principles of actually doing business, they're phenomenal, really. They're very, very deep and underlying, and essentially a lot deeper than just earning money or kind of being successful. He's definitely a nihilist.
You love calling people nihilists.
But I think even just his quote, which you're going to read in a second, is pretty nihilistic.
I push back on you a little bit on this whole nihilism thing, because maybe I'm wrong here. I could be completely wrong here. However, bear with me for 1 second. My limited understanding of nihilism, nothing really matters. So what's the point? Very nihilistic. And apologies if this is a sensitive topic for some people, but I heard somebody talking about the likes of school shooters as a great example for nothing matters. Therefore, I'm just going to go. Now, this isn't every school shooter. I understand a lot of psychological issues, but nothing matters. Therefore, nobody's life matters. Therefore, I'm going to go and do this thing that I feel like doing because nothing actually matters. And everyone's trying to tell us all these things about who we are and we should learn this stuff. And then you end up with somebody who's really, really doesn't have any respect for the whole concept of life or the world or existence and goes and does something terrible like a massacre like that. I heard maybe it was Peterson or someone talk about it in that sense of things. For me, I like to think about, and this actually, we're going to have a great conversation about this based on this quote. I don't think this is completely nihilistic because my view on things is most of the things that we get worried about don't matter. But I don't think they don't matter because nothing matters. I think they don't matter because they don't have a lot of weight when it comes to how we actually live our lives. It'll make sense in the context of this quote, which I'll read out in a second, but I don't take the view that nothing matters. So what's the point? I take the view that a lot of the stuff that we worry about doesn't matter. My granddad used to have a great saying, and it was very simple. It wasn't even like a really philosophical saying, but it was. He used to say like 99% of the things that we worry about don't ever happen, and the 1% that does happen is going to happen anyway. So why worry about it? And that 99% is the bit that I would look at as what you're saying is nihilistic. I don't think none of it matters at all, but it doesn't matter in the context of how we should feel and how we should live our lives. Does that make sense?
No, that definitely makes sense. I suppose the reason I'm saying why Hormozy is nihilistic is just his content and what he said in the past around this kind of idea. I should go back to it, the first arrow and the second arrow. He's very big on that second arrow and essentially just creating up your own narrative around anything, your own story around whatever the hell you do.
But if he was a true nihilist, why would he worry about creating a narrative? He would just say, nothing matters.
Well, I think that's the whole point. He says that nothing matters, so we can just do whatever we want to do.
But why would you do what you want to do if nothing matters? Why would you bother creating your own narrative? Like he says none of this shit matters. Being happy isn't important. I like building business, so I will spend every single hour of my day building business because that's what I like to do. I think if he was a true nihilist, he'd be like...
I get you, yeah. No, that's fair enough. That could be the case, where if he's a true nihilist, maybe he would do nothing. Is that what you mean? Because he said, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, maybe there's a hint of nihilism then.
Yeah, no, let's put it this way. Nihilism is probably a scale.
Yeah, okay.
He's on the scale. We're all on the scale of being a little bit.
But that's what the one thing I'd say about Hormozy. What I really like about him, though, is this idea of that scale that he's on when it regards to nihilism, changing that kind of second arrow or that narrative, and even just this alone, the perspective he got this morning. Do you want to read it out because it's phenomenal?
Yeah, I'll read it out. So this is just Hormozy puts up like tweets. He'll screenshot them on Instagram. At your funeral, friends and family will argue over who gets what. People will want food to eat. The topic will shift from your life to their lives. They'll drive away thinking about their looming to-do list. Some people won't be able to make it because something came up. So before I go off on an absolute rant here, what do you think? What does that mean to you? Because it meant something slightly different to you, which was interesting when you said it to me. It meant something a little bit different to you than it did to me.
Yeah, well, it just like, number one is just that life does go on, which was really interesting. Was that like, when I do die, people will definitely be affected. Certainly those closest to me, but they'll have to deal with the kind of bullshit in the day-to-day of what's going to happen here and now. But then the other people kind of around it, especially those people who are quote-unquote too busy to come, they're often the people that you might think about when you're living your life day-to-day, especially if you have a business or you're creating content or you're pushing yourself to go to the next level or take action. Because the people who love you, who actually matter, you're not concerned about them because they understand who you are and kind of what's going on and all. So just that perspective shift of like, oh, it's all bullshit. Like, there's the stuff that you're actually worrying about is just ridiculous. And because Hormozy talks about legacy as well, because it's very, very big in the entrepreneur space, or your vision that I'm going to leave a legacy. And he was like, if I leave a legacy and I help millions of people in a lifetime or two, it's forgotten about. And no one actually cares. You're not leaving much of a legacy. So you even know this. So like really famous pop stars and actors and well-known people, much more so than me, they die and people mourn for a week.
Are you well known?
No, not at all. But like for a week, they mourn and it's just forgotten about. People don't care anymore. And it's just mad.
So what does that mean to you? What do you take from that? How will that change how you live your life? The reason I ask you this question before you answer is, and you taught me this, business, why I like, and I'll speak for you as well on this because I think I'm right here, why we like Hormozy is not because we're building $1 million businesses or anything like that. His business content is quite helpful, but we know the stuff he's talking about. Why we like it, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is because you always say to me, business, podcast, all these things that we do and commit ourselves to are a development or an avenue for personal development. So I like the way he talks about some of this stuff because it helps me live better as opposed to just build my business. And I know I say this a lot on this podcast. I am a business owner. I'm interested in business. You're a business owner. A lot of people we talk to are business owners. This is not necessarily about business. I use all of these principles as a metaphor for life. If I'm better at business, those skills are transferable for me in a lot of cases to life. And the stuff that Hormozy teaches it's like Naval. They're general principles. And Naval talks about generating wealth, but the skills you need to generate that wealth make you a better person. Hormozy talks about building business, but the skills you need to build business make you a more capable person and make your day-to-day better and the existence is better. So again, why I don't think it's completely nihilistic is your existence in general is a better existence. There's no like you're going to achieve happiness and have millions of dollars and have this big plaque on the wall. That's not important. But your daily existence is better because you're more competent, you're more able, you're more capable, you build better networks, you engage with better people. That's why I love his content because it indirectly teaches me, and he knows what he's doing, but it indirectly teaches me how to be a better person as well. Make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely agree. Like dead right. I'm using my business as an avenue for my personal development. But as you said, it's not just your business; it's your strength training. It's me being a father. It's any aspect of your life, because these areas are very difficult to be successful in, quote unquote. And we all struggle and we all have bad days. But at least if we're able to experience it and learn from it and grow from it, then, like I said, we're better, like 100%. And even especially someone like Hormozy, who has earned hundreds of millions, but still comes back to this idea of developing personally and not just chasing the money and understanding that it's so much deeper than just being quote unquote successful.
Yeah, I think it's why people like him, it's why I find it a lot easier to believe people like him when they say stuff like this.
Because they've actually experienced it.
Yeah. And he's doing it right now. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars and he's still doing it because it's the process that he enjoys. And I like this concept of the process. It's like it is the daily thing. It's the getting up and the doing of the thing that he enjoys because he could stop now. And he also says he doesn't believe it's about the millions and millions and billions and billions. So why is he still doing it? Because he's living out the stuff that he's actually talking about. And I like that.
Well, what was your takeaway from that quote?
Now that you've explained it slightly differently than you did earlier on, it's pretty much the exact same as yours.
Oh, right, sorry. What did I say earlier on, by the way?
I don't know. You said something. I can't remember. It wasn't the same as what you said there.
Okay, sorry.
So we're getting the new take. Brian changes his mind all the time. For me, why I like this, because people will look at this and go, oh, that's awful. Jesus, it is really nihilistic. It is really kind of negative. That nothing really matters. I'll repeat this again. I don't think nothing matters. I just think a lot of the things that I personally spend a lot of my day thinking about and worrying about, you put it really nicely there, we're thinking about these people who aren't thinking about us. And we are creating a perspective in our own head, a second arrow we're creating in our own head based off what we think these people are thinking of us. And he used an example here, and this is relevant for me because I post regularly enough on social media for the business. And I'll post a piece of content that I spent, like yesterday, I spent a good bit of time creating a piece of content. It wasn't like hours and hours and hours, but a good bit of time that I could have been doing something else. And I posted this piece of content. I was really proud of it. It looked good, sounded good. I was like, I'm really happy with that. I created something that was really nice. And I didn't get the immediate feedback. The day before, I posted a clip from Pat Tivoli's podcast, like 13,000 views on it. And I posted this thing, it was like 400 views. And my brain struggles to get away from the numbers thing. In my plan, it's not important. The numbers don't mean anything to me. What means something to me is constantly delivering value. And there's people listening who engage with it, and I'm building a community, and I like that. That's why I do it. But I still can't escape from, but I put these numbers up and people aren't liking this one, and why didn't they like this one compared to the last one? And when I read this quote, I'm like, the people that I'm worried about, those numbers on Instagram of people, like, I don't know 13,000 people. So all those people who like watched that thing the day before, I don't know those people, but I'm thinking about them. And that helps create a view of who I view myself as, and it creates a negative view because I'm not getting enough. And then I spiral down this entire kind of drain hole of negativity, and my day feels worse. I have a worse day because of that. Whereas if what you just said there, I'm thinking about what these people think of me. If I can cut that out of my life, based off this quote and what you just said there, then I have a less negative view of myself in that day, and my day is generally better. And I've said this before, I believe that the whole point here is every day should be as good as you can possibly make it. Because then at the end of every day you go, that was a pretty decent day. And at the end of your life you go, that was a bunch of pretty decent days.
Do you know what's very interesting though? Is that, because I have the exact same feelings as you when you put out a piece of content. Like one day it was really good, the next day it doesn't, and ultimately it doesn't matter. But at that moment you're like, this is terrible. Am I good enough? What the hell's wrong with me? Is it not? But, and this is the joys of life. We're going to create content every single day. And it's just going to be cyclical, up and down and chop and changing. It's never going to be the same, quote unquote, success all the time.
And success, that word is an interesting one, because we said, was it on our podcast we said this before? That idea of success, Hermo talked about this, but a lot of successful people talk about this as well. The people who don't get that success are the people who allow those negative feelings of I posted this thing and nothing happened to stop them. The people who don't stop, they succeed. It's almost like a direct trade-off. Don't stop, you will succeed.
Yeah. But it's very hard not to stop.
It's nearly impossible because it feels awful. Like we're literally talking about this on Tuesday, and Monday I posted something and got these feelings again. Now, it didn't cripple me. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is terrible. But I was aware of those feelings going, I wish I had more views in this post. But then when I actually sit down and break it down, like why? Why do I want more views on this post? Do I want 12,000 more clients tomorrow? Do I think that this is going to equal 12,000 more clients tomorrow? Does more clients equal a more successful, happy life? And then you start asking all these questions, and then you realize, hold on, let's use this perspective I claim to have and break all these points down individually. And once I break them all down, I'm like, oh yeah, those numbers mean literally nothing. And I'm laughing at you saying you feel the same thing, because I produce content for a bunch of other business owners now. You know most of them. And on a regular basis, I get voice notes. Hey, Dan, just that last post I put up there didn't quite do as well. And we have the same conversation always at the start of this process of like, it's not about individual posts. It's not even about the overall post. Not about the numbers. Not about any of that. It's about the process. Why are we doing this? Who are we talking to? What are we building here? Let's be creative. Let's grow this together. Let's do something cool. Let's enjoy the process. And inevitably, both me and my client, after like 2 weeks, like, why isn't that one doing as well? Why isn't this one doing as well? It's crazy. It's crazy. It can't escape from it. And
I just want to read the copy then underneath that Hermosi had.
Oh, it's very good.
Post. So he was like, and we worry about a low performing post on social media, or what someone thinks of us, quote unquote, a bad customer review, or whether we're going to finish our to-do list in time. We die like we go to sleep, with things unsaid and unfinished. The only judge who has complete context on our lives dies with us. A reminder of the heavy weight we place on things that matter very little.
Goosebumps.
That's mental, isn't it though? And it said there, like, we die, and the person that makes that judgment is us, and we go with us. That's mad, man. That's crazy. Like, it's all just in your head. That story, that second arrow. And I'll go back to it like, I think as you get more mature and you start to understand life, that it's really difficult, that it's never going to get any easier, no matter what we achieve. That goal, I think, whatever the goal is, physically, professionally, personally, it's all just to make us better. And I think we all get lost in the second arrow. That negativity comes in and things don't go as planned. But even when they do go to plan, there's always tomorrow, and there's always potential of that second arrow being negative again. That we have to just constantly build that awareness going, no, we have that power, we can change that. Fucking difficult though.
Yeah. And it comes back to awareness. It always comes back to awareness. Developing the awareness around that. Like, because even having this concept of the second arrow is a form of having awareness about it. If you understand that exists, you're not, and again, it's another Pat Tivoli mentioned it. It was a Carl Jung quote. If you, Jesus Christ, only the other day, I always mess this up. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. So unless you can bring some awareness to the fact that you have decisions, you have control over this, it will control you, and you won't even know you're being controlled. It will be your fate. You'll just call it fate. But if you can just bring some awareness to it, it's no longer fate. You're now in control, and that completely changes the balance of the game. And that's why I think a lot of these people speak about this stuff, is because they know that you can just you don't change the world. Nothing actually changes except how you view things and how you interact with the world around you. And I know I speak about this a lot. Like, for example, I've been to social media thing up a lot. Social media is just a tool. It's an app. How you interact with that will Jesus Christ, what's the word I'm looking for here? Dictate. How you interact with that will dictate the outcome for you, how you feel about it. So if you are just mindlessly scrolling, you'll feel shit. If you're going on to build a business or contribute a bit or post content without expecting immediate return, you'll feel great. So it's just your perspective. The thing doesn't change. But how you engage with it changes. And that goes for everything in the world. How you engage with the world, how you engage with your partner, how you engage with your business, how you engage with your friends, family, the guy on the road who cuts you off, all the examples that constantly keep coming up. If you bring awareness to your response to those things, you're in control. Well, not that you're in control, but you have
Well, you got more power.
more power to control.
Exactly. Which it doesn't,
It's hard.
Exactly. It doesn't make it necessarily any easier
No.
to take the action, but at least you've got the awareness. So the action step becomes maybe a little bit clearer. It doesn't mean you're going to actually take it. And that's where I'd always fall back on systems or standards, because at least in the chaos of life, you've got some trajectory of where you're going or what you can do, you know, when shit hits the fan or things don't go well or whatever. Like even, for example, like that post didn't go well for you. You know you're going to post again tomorrow. You know you're going to keep posting.
That's the funny thing. It did not go well. Like hundreds of people saw the post.
Yeah.
It just didn't do what I thought this arbitrary
And
thing that it should do.
what is it? Like, what was the thing? Because even like define it. It's hard to define even, isn't it though? To say, is it 10,000 views or is it this many likes? What
It's
is the
arbitrary.
thing?
It's nothing. There's no thing.
No.
The thing, and like the funny thing is, and it's so funny. Like coaches, and not that I'm a coach, but I coach a lot of this content stuff now with podcasts from a distribution point of view. How to get it out there. Social media is very powerful. So how to use the apps and how to create content and how to get your message out effectively. And the whole point for me, I say this to everybody all the time, which is so funny why I get caught up in it. And it's the same for like people who coach fitness. They're still very body conscious. They're still dealing with the problems. It's not about an individual post. It's not about it doing well or not doing well. It's about the big picture. What are you presenting to the world? And in my case, I have an Instagram account and a TikTok and a LinkedIn and a YouTube and a podcast and a website and a newsletter and a client base and a personal circle. And all of those things combined, I have an incredible network that does really well and brings me a load of business. So when I post one thing on Instagram and it doesn't immediately blow up and get 100,000 fucking inquiries through Instagram, how is that a failure? It's not. By my metric of success, it's successful. And also the fact that I managed to create it and post it is another metric for success I use. Can I consistently create content to get my message out there? Yes. So that's a successful post. It like represents success in so many different ways, but it doesn't represent success in the arbitrary measures that we have become used to. For example, how many likes do you get? How much money do you earn? All this kind of stuff. Now, there's nuances to all this because how much money you earn can dictate how you build your life, I suppose, to a certain degree. But most people use it as like, I make 80 grand, I make 90 grand. Oh, he's doing well, he's making 90 grand. That person could be fucking miserable.
Yeah.
His lifestyle might cost him 130 grand. Whereas the person making 80 grand, their lifestyle might cost them 40 grand. So they're wealthy. So it's that perspective. If you don't have perspective, you could be miserable.
Well, ego then, really, isn't it? Because that's what it comes down to, though. And I think that's what it is. Like, it's nothing to do, like I said, you were fine. And it's just that ego in all of us. We go, oh, I'm not good enough. What are people going to think? What if they see that thing? What if they all know I'm a fucking idiot? Like, and that's what we all have to deal with. Ego.
What do you think ego is? Are you angling at what I think you're angling at?
Yeah, I was going to, yeah. Exactly.
Tell me first, what do you think ego is?
Well, I don't really know what ego is, to be fair. It's just this fucking voice in your head that it is just, again, go back to kind of the second arrow, the stories that you've heard, your experience in life, again, society at large, and the message that we're being told and given every single day for, in my case, the last 35 years. So I think we're going to talk about it in a second, I'm sure, but like, it's always there. So it's about like trying to gain some awareness around, like, you always ask me this question as well, especially when it comes to business or make a decision in business. Like, do you want this? Like, is this what you actually want? And it might sound like a really simple question, but if you just sit with yourself on any action step that you're going to take or something that you're focused on, sit with, well, do I actually want this? Because oftentimes you go, well, no, I actually don't want this thing I'm aiming for. So why the hell are you doing it? Oftentimes we're just doing it because we think we have to, or again, other people. Like, a lot of the decisions we're making really aren't decisions that we want to make. And when you kind of boil it down and you go, well, fuck me, Pink, actually, maybe I don't have to do this, you know? So I'm rambling on here. Like, I don't know what really ego is, but it's something in my head that I can get rid of through certain practices, but it's there every single day.
Cool.
What do you think it is?
I think it's funny because ego and the ego, I'm going to split them up just for the I don't know if it's different, but for the purpose of trying to explain what my view on this is. So, like, people, I think, hear the word ego and they think of being egotistical, as if being prideful and full of yourself and stuff like that. The ego, and I've learned a lot of this only very recently over the last couple of years, but my idea of the ego is your vision of who you think you are in the world. And that is based on every single experience that you've ever had, every thought you've ever had, everything that's ever happened to you, every reaction, every trauma, everything has created this version that you think is Brian, that I think is Dan, and that is the ego. It is you. And something I learned really, which was really interesting lately, because I used to think, oh, that's a bad thing. Let's try and completely dissolve that. And we'll get into ego dissolution now in a second. But I heard someone speaking recently about the ego is extremely important as well to help you orientate yourself in the world. Because without an idea of who or what you are in the world, you've no orientation for yourself. How do you interact with people? How do you integrate into society? You'd be nothing. So the ego is important. However, a lot of our egos have been malformed or created from bad experiences and bad programming and this idea of trauma that we spoke about before. So we end up with this thing that we view ourselves as, which isn't an accurate representation of who we actually are in the world. So my take on ego is a goal I would have is to try and align who I actually am in the world, which I don't know who that is yet because it's shrouded by all of this kind of baggage that I carry. For example, if something happened to me, I have a bad relationship with money or with relationships or with whatever. My goal would be to try and make a better connection between who I actually am and my vision of myself, my view of myself, my idea of myself. That is what I view as the ego. So where I first heard about the idea of the ego was, which is something we are going to talk about, which is psychedelics. When I first came across the world of psychedelics or plant medicines, whatever you want to call it, a lot of what they spoke about was the idea of ego dissolution, where you can remove a lot of the programming, or at least temporarily sidestep a lot of that programming, remove it from the picture and connect with a deeper sense of who you are, who you actually are. And that will allow you then to start doing some work. So it's not the process of doing the psychedelic, that's a tool to help you get down to the deeper stuff. To maybe put this a bit more simply, a lot of people struggle with talk therapy because they struggle to get past the learned behaviors, either conscious or unconscious, that they have to protect themselves from trauma, whatever. So a therapist will really struggle to help a lot of people get to a place where they can actually work on real stuff, because all they're getting is this projected shit, this defense layer after defense layer after defense layer, which is the ego. But with something like a psychedelic, it allows you to very quickly break down all that defense layer, removes it all, ego dissolution, dissolves it temporarily, and allows you to get right down to the root of who you are. And you can start working through some of that stuff, maybe some of your triggers, some of your past experiences, and in a real and safe, depending on the environment, way. And then you can combine that with somebody who knows how to talk to you to build back up a positive perspective, like we talk about, on all of that stuff, and create a healthier version of your ego, which is much more in line with who you actually are as a person. Jesus, that was philosophical.
Yeah, no, fair play. And that's exactly but that's exactly what I would like say. We're talking about psychedelics there. I give an experience of my first time ever taking ayahuasca.
You take drugs?
Not drugs, psychedelics. It's fine. It's different.
It's plant medicine.
But ayahuasca, about four and a half years ago, I took it. So, for those you don't know, it's plant medicine from the Amazon, and I took it in Ireland.
Can we deal with some terminology before you start?
Yes.
Sorry to cut across today.
Go ahead.
Because you're a big fan of, what's his name? Minflows.
Yes.
So there's a thing happening at the moment where people are like rolling their eyes at plant medicines.
Yes.
And I think I know why. I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me. This stuff has become very popular recently. So like everything that becomes popular, there's a huge percentage of people who do it because it's popular and not necessarily understand the massive responsibility that you have when you engage with something like this. So what I have seen happening, it's become very pop culture-y. So a lot of people are doing ayahuasca, and we always laugh about people doing like 97 ayahuasca journeys. Like, if you're on 97, fucking something's not happening. I know, and you know, that a big part of doing all this kind of stuff is integration. So actually doing the work afterwards, and the thing itself is just the start. It's just the trigger. Whereas a huge amount of people have started doing it as the thing. So I do all these plant medicine ceremonies, and that word plant medicine, they use it because it's cool, it's chic, it's not psychedelics. But anybody who's been in in the world of plant medicines or psychedelics for a long time and understands the value, have started to distance themselves from a lot of those phrases because it's associated now with this new wave of chic modern people. So, but plant medicine essentially means psychedelics. No,
but you are right though. It's cool now to be saying that you do psychedelics.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, and it's like, number one, like mushrooms aren't the answer, or psychedelics aren't the answer for curing all of your quote unquote trauma.
They're a tool.
Exactly, it's a tool. And like I said, the hardest part is after using that tool is the integration from the lessons that you have got, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent on that experience, and doing the everyday mundane stuff that we all know what we should do, but we don't do. So it definitely, and it's not even an experience that you necessarily go and go, this is going to be brilliant. Like it's a tool that you're learning more about yourself. So again, just like business, it's extremely difficult. But I done ayahuasca. I've been researching ayahuasca previous for about 3.5 years. I never thought I'd do it, actually, to be fair. I just podcasts, that research, going, oh, that sounds amazing.
Why were you interested in it?
I don't know, really. I just came across it, obviously. I don't know why I got interested, but then obviously just the narrative behind it and what it was and what it could do. I just decided to get more and more interested. But what they do always say when it comes to psychedelics in particular and ayahuasca is that you'll be called to the medicine. So it's something that you'll just know intuitively yourself that you should do. And I was actually at a mentorship up in Belfast, and this random guy who I didn't know came up to me and was like, how's it going, man? I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I just feel like I have to. I done ayahuasca last week, and I just wanted to tell you.
He was looking at you going, this guy needs to calm the fuck down. This guy's a million miles a minute. He needs to just sit down for 5 minutes and think about something.
But I had been researching it for the 3 years previous, and he had said it to me, and I was like, jeez, I got to go and do it. And I, even around that time, I was kind of researching. I found a place that I could go and do it and stuff. So I was like, I'm going to do it. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing it up is because my very first experience, and it was really extremely difficult. So the weekend that I did it, there was like just darkness and awfulness, and I can't even explain what it was. It was quite difficult. But there was some lovely.
You did it in Ireland?
In Ireland, I did it, yeah. But there's some lovely moments as well. And the very first thing that happened after I did it was my missus. So Danielle was coming and going. So I was under the medicine. I was, quote unquote, on a trip. So my eyes were closed. Was I dreaming? Was I just living this thing? Whatever you want to say.
Tripping balls.
I don't know, yeah. And Danielle was coming and going. And I was really afraid of letting her go. So she's like coming and going. I was like, oh, don't go. I literally have fear. And eventually, after this kind of coming and going for a few minutes, I was like, no, it's okay. I can let her go. And once I let her go, I started to cry. I don't know if I was crying or I was imagining this. And this pink glow came flying out of my heart. And I mean pouring out. I was lying down up towards the ceiling, it was pouring out. So I was crying with like, not necessarily sadness, I was just crying. This pink glow burning out of me. And I thought it was love for Danielle. And I realized as this went on for it seemed about 5 or 10 minutes, I was actually just crying for myself. I loved myself. This was me loving myself, what felt like for the first time ever. It was, I can't even now I'm getting goosebumps. But it was so visceral and so real. And I wouldn't have said previous of my 30 years that I didn't love myself. I had my issues and certainly the stories and narratives around myself that I would question every day. But not deep down that I didn't love myself. But that, again, go back to kind of what psychedelics are. We're able to build awareness around, well, wait a second, maybe you don't love yourself. And I was able to experience love for myself for the first time, genuinely probably ever. And then to take that into the rest of my life and kind of start to integrate and kind of learn. But this idea, like psychedelics are cool now. And they're not for everybody. Like they really aren't. And I'm not doing it because I think I'm cool or that you should do it or whatever. It's a tool for me and that's all it is. Like I think I've done psychedelics over the last 4 years once a year. So like 4 or 5 times, not much more than that. And I don't really feel the need to do it. Because actually the first time I did it, I think I did it twice in 1 year, even twice in like 3 or 4 months. And the second time, the medicine was like, yeah, fuck you, mate. What are you doing here? Like you know what you should be doing. You're full of shit and you want the answers. Get out of here. Off you go. I don't know why I'm rambling on here, but I basically like
very interesting.
Psychedelics are a tool to build awareness. Like my business, like me being a father, like me wanting to strength train when I could not be arsed. Everything is just a tool. And whether we want to listen or not is up to us, I suppose. But it's all very difficult. And even though you might get the answer in any of these avenues, and there's plenty more you can do, meditation and journaling, conversation, etc., we still got to take the action. We still got to do the work on those inevitable days that we could not be arsed or we do not feel great. And that's why the likes of having conversations or maybe using psychedelics, but again, just gaining awareness around your life as much as possible, knowing that the first arrow is coming, which is life, and it's difficult. But we have control of that second arrow. So if we can keep building the awareness and use these tools, we can begin to, script and write that story and narrative a little bit easier. I've rambled on here a bit.
No, that was beautiful, man. That was beautiful.
Well, what's your take? It's like, because psychedelics then, because you've done a little bit yourself before I had detailed my story to you, and then obviously you've gone a little bit deeper as well over the last while, but what are psychedelics to you over the last couple of years?
I want to bring, because there's various different perspectives on psychedelics, plant medicine, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to bring a few of them to the table. Not that these are my views. These are just things I've learned over the last few years. I've always been interested in the mind, and I've always had the idea that there's a lot more to what this is than what we see. And now I understand the the impact that programming has on us. I'm not talking about programming like we mean with tinfoil hat. We're being programmed. Everything that's happened to us ever has programmed us to see things in a certain way. So we all have our own unique filters on the world, and we're not seeing the world as it is. So I've always been interested in that. My initial experience was with in the clinic I worked with. The doctor was doing ketamine therapy for exactly the reasons I explained to there. From a physiological point of view, that type of treatment can really help with a rewiring of the brain. And for people who have struggled with things like anxiety, depression, specifically addiction, it can help to resensitize receptors in the brain for different neurotransmitters and stuff like that. So there's a medical side to it, and then an experiential side, like you're just talking about there, in terms of dealing with past experiences or breaking down the ego and stuff like that. So I had a little bit of experience. I had tried 2 treatments there just as a test to see, not for any specific reason, which is where I learned my first mistake was. I had no real intent for it. I was just trying it. So they were difficult to try and figure out what was going on. And since then, I did a lot of research, and then I met you, and we've really kind of looked into what this is and consumed a lot of content around it and spoke to a lot of people and have had our own experiences. So I look at this. My personal views on this would be the same as yours, but there's a lot of perspectives that people bring to this. For example, Andrew Huberman, who's someone I have a lot of time for, doesn't agree at all with this type of psychedelic. He does acknowledge there's benefits to it, but he doesn't think it is the soul-searching kind of thing. I think, and I don't want to butcher his views here, so I'll look it up afterwards and I'll do some more content on it, but he seems to be saying that one of the major benefits are it just gives the brain a break from all the madness that's going on. It's not necessarily this idea of going deep down inside and soul-searching. It's just stopping the constant input for a certain period of time and allowing your brain to kind of recover a little bit, which is why people got a lot of the benefits. That would be kind of, again, sorry Andrew if you're listening, if I've butchered your opinion there, but then you have a lot of the people who are deeply embedded in the spiritual world, and there's a lot of language used around the medicine as a conscious being, a contributor to
Mother ayahuasca.
Mother ayahuasca, mushrooms, and being the connector, the mycelium connecting all the souls and spirits of people in a non-religious way, but in like a connection to the earth. And a lot of people in that sphere would speak about.
There's also a religious aspect, though, of seeing God, etc. And this is potentially going back to thousands of years and tribes using psychedelics.
Really interesting. A lot of the people in the clinic, when I worked in the clinic, a lot of the people who were really religious, they saw God. And having done the experience myself, I think I know why. Because they saw something greater than themselves, and their word for that, based on their beliefs, was God. I also saw that there was something greater than me, that I wasn't the center of the universe, that I was just the center of my universe, but actually I'm just a small part of the bigger picture. That seems to be a really constant with people who do this type of thing, and understanding that you are part of a bigger thing, and whether that's God or whether that's a collective or whether that's the mycelium or whatever, it seems to be really common across all of that. But people who go in with a religious background or religious beliefs and faith, they see God, they speak to God, and they have that really religious experience, whereas other people who don't have a similar experience, but they don't use the word God for it. They use something greater, bigger. But there's that element of it. And then there's the deeply scientific people who are like just the really deeply research-based, and who look at the effect of specific molecules and specific receptors in the brain and how they become psychoactive and what this can do. And then there's the psychotherapy side of things, where they look at the breakdown of traumas and stuff like that, and how it can transport you to different times within the catalogue of your brain. My opinion is, I don't think any of those people are right by themselves. I think it's a collection of all of that. And I think something Gabor Mate said was really interesting. Like, even the likes of medicine, brain, psychology and all this, we take this as gospel. But we built it all. Like, we built all these systems, medicine, our understanding of the body and everything like that. And it's well acknowledged. We don't know really what's going on at all. Mm-hmm. But we think, especially now, seeing as medicine is well established, that this is how it is. So my belief is there's way more. Having done, I always believe there's way more. I'm not a devout Christian or anything like that. I don't believe those things, but I do believe there's something else. I don't know what it is, but there's something bigger. Than when I had my psychedelic experiences, it was almost confirmed for me. But the biggest experience I had was this idea of ego dissolution. It kind of broke down this idea of myself, which at the start was terrifying. If you're not prepared for it, it's terrifying. You think you're gone. It's completely dissolved you. But when you are educated in this and you have somebody to help you, they explain to you, it's not you it's breaking down. It's this idea you have of yourself. And if you allow that to happen, you'll be able to get closer to who you actually are and see why you feel the way you feel about certain things, and why you respond the way you respond, and why you live the life the way you do, why you carry the traumas and baggages you do. And when you can understand that, you can work on that. And that's where the work comes in. So my experiences have all been around that, and very similar to you. I've only had two like psilocybin ceremonies, and the first one was unbelievable in terms of I was ready for it. I surrendered to it. I had an amazing experience, and I was able to carry a lot of that into my life. And I'm still not integrating the vast majority of it, but it taught me lessons that I really think these are good lessons to bring into my life. So it wasn't like, oh, I had an experience and it changed my life. I had an experience that showed me how to change my life, and it's working. So I'm a big believer there. And then the second experience, I went back, which is over a year later. It wasn't like it was the next week, and I was expecting the exact same thing, and I got a kick in the ass. And whatever way you want to look at this, from a scientific, from a spiritual, from a whatever point of view, I got a kick in the ass. And essentially, like you, I was told. Now, I was told, this is the language that we use. Yeah. I was told, no, man. No, this is not how it works. Like, you're still not doing most of the stuff that you experienced before. Because I think deep down inside, we do know that, but we're living in this idea of the ego. So it bypasses that ego again and goes, remember, pal? Remember we showed you all this already? And then it also told me that it's not about just constantly doing this stuff and more stuff. I actually got a big lesson about doing less and like pulling back from a lot of stuff and like taking the foot off the gas in certain areas, not doing more, doing less and less and allowing this stuff to come out. But it was really difficult the second time, whereas the first time was unbelievable. So again, I've rambled there now as well, but just to give you a collection of the experiences and perspectives that I've heard and my own experience. But ultimately, I believe it's an incredibly powerful tool, but the most important thing is the work you do after, which is why I believe, like you said, it's not for everybody, and you don't need it. Not everybody needs this. In fact, nobody needs this, because you can do this yourself. The problem that we have is we're so tied in with the distractions, with all of the stuff. To go back to Hermosi, we're thinking about the social media posts, the work, the job, the money, how we should be, our own traumas, our own baggage, that we just don't have the headspace, the time, or the perspective to work on the things that would make us better versions of ourselves. Hence why this can be a helpful tool. Sorry, there's my monologue.
Yeah, no, that's because I think what's quite important to. Am I on camera there? I am. I thought you what to fish me. You done that really well. I didn't realize that you'd done it.
You sound surprised, man, that I did that really well.
Sorry, that was so well done. I was like, he hasn't done it. He forgot. I looked over. I could see it on the screen. Oh my god. But you mentioned there about the work you have to do afterwards. I think what's quite important is the work even beforehand and in the middle of it in terms of set and setting, because the intention of why you're going in. Just to give you a little bit of background, like my first intentions for doing ayahuasca. Actually, do you know what? A big reason why I done ayahuasca was before Sailor was born, and I was going to be a father, and I was quite worried. I was very busy at work. I wasn't present. I was like, I want to be better for her.
What were you worried about?
About not being present and working like crazy, and I want to be a good father, basically. And she was going to be born in whatever 6 months' time and stuff. So I was like, maybe ayahuasca would be a tool I could use. And it definitely showed me some amazing things regarding Sailor and my life and stuff like that. But the intention I had for ayahuasca, I worked with somebody, Minflows, for a month or two beforehand, just detailing he had done it before, as what kind of experience, he helped me with my intentions. And my intentions were, show me who I have become, take me back to my heart at all costs, and something else I can't think of right now. But just those two alone. Show me who I have become and take me back to my heart at all costs. I sat, meditated and journaled on them for weeks beforehand, and then in the ceremony itself as well. And even the ceremony itself, and particularly the ones that we've been to regarding the psilocybin ceremonies, you have to feel safe. You want to be surrounded by people who know what they're doing. They actually go through a really good workshop the day beforehand to give you the tools, to give you the experience, to give you the know-how, how to navigate difficult parts of the journey and how to ask better questions, etc.
Which is probably the most important part of the whole thing. That's why it's done so right in that setting.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But this isn't just like, go and do some drugs, you and the lads, you and your own, having the crack, just go and do a bit of mushrooms and all. Like, this is, you're really thinking about why you're doing it. You're going in with real intention, and you're being surrounded by people who are being massively vulnerable and open and wanting to learn more about themselves and their past experience. So just that's what's really important. Like, it's just not something that you're going in kind of half-arsed thing. It's a bit of crack, or even it's going to give you the answers. Because like you said, the second time you went, you were expecting the same experience and more answers. I was the exact same. The second time I was like, yeah, I had a good experience there. Give me more. And it's like, no, you idiot. How fucking dare you? Who the fuck think you are? Oh, you're going to fucking fix you. And knowing what I'm not doing day to day and all this kind of crap. And this is what I mean about just life in general, and go back to business and everything. It's just, it's a constant. Sorry,
I'm going to jump in there before I forget this point, because you touched on something really interesting there. I think, and this is going to blow our horns a little bit here, because we have one of the reasons that not that we struggle, but we suffer a little bit with like imposter syndrome and overthinking things so much, is because we are constantly trying to find awareness around ourselves. We constantly try and practice it, and like I fall off the wagon all the time. You're a little bit more consistent than me, but we're trying to find ways to find that awareness because we know it exists now. So when we go and do something like this, we are very clear that we are going in here to learn something that's going to be difficult and to bring something at the far side of it. I know there's the type of person who doesn't have that type of awareness, who goes to do these, and they are the Huberman side. They just got the experience is a break from reality for them. Like every other addiction, Mint Flows hammers this point as well. Like every other addiction, alcohol is usually used to escape from reality. Now people will say, "Oh, it's not. It's just a bit of fun." If people have a problem with alcohol, overconsumption of alcohol, overconsumption of drugs, because drugs aren't the problem, it's overconsumption, it's abuse. Abuse is always the word. Abuse of anything, pornography, social media, anything. Overuse and abuse is the problem, and it's always an escapism. So if you're going and doing the 97 ayahuasca ceremonies, it's a form of escapism. If you're going with a really clear intent and you're coming out the far side with a set of things that you have to do, and you're very aware, I'm not going back for more information until I can work through some of this stuff. I think that's massively important. I just wanted to touch on that there, because that's why, again, it's very chic now. People go and do the things. They go and do but it can be a form of escapism, just to go and do a ceremony on the weekend with your friends and think that's the work. And that brings me to another thing I absolutely love talking about, which is mental masturbation. The idea of reading the book and that you've done the thing because you've read the book. I've read Atomic Habits, but have you done anything from the book? I think it was, I heard someone speak about this once before. I'd rather read the same 10 books over and over and over again. Who says this?
Naval, I think.
Is it Naval?
Yeah.
I'd rather read the same 10 books over and over and over again and constantly work on what they're showing me, as opposed to read every good book in the world or all the books in the world or something like that. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, you don't need to, if you keep going back to these things, they're crutches, they're distractions, as opposed to using them as tools. But that comes back to your intent. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting you're saying that there, because I think oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this myself, that there's something else. There's something else outside of me, something that I'm not doing, something that I don't know.
Outsource the problem.
Yeah, so if I keep asking a question, I'll find the answer eventually if I keep going down.
That's another great point, yeah. Yeah, that's another good one.
I was say, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point, yeah. That's another reason, yeah.
So, like we were saying, Cam Haines, our podcast.
Oh, animal.
But we're just saying to, like, nobody cares. Do the work. Like,
nobody cares, work harder. Keep hammering.
But it's doing the work every day that is difficult. But deep down, like I say, go back to Hermosa's quote with the funeral stuff, nobody really cares. And those who do care are there day to day and see how difficult it is and see what you have to do, and you'll get on with it. And they're there to support you anyway, you know? But I'm kind of rambling on here. What was my point? I've kind of lost my point of what I was saying beforehand. Sorry.
No, it was a good point, because you were... I think why we have these conversations, why we do this on mic, and for people who are listening, fair play, because it always goes this way with me and you. But like, we do this all the time. I think I want to impress this point on people. What me and you are doing right now is what we constantly do. This is how we talk. People don't believe this. We talk like this when we meet up and go for lunch, or go for a walk, or go for a hike. Literally, this is all we talk about. We're not talking about the football scores. We're talking about, like, trying to understand, like, why do we do psychedelics? This is why I made the point. It wasn't an ego thing. This is why I made the point earlier on about me and you, when we go to these ceremonies and stuff, we are desperate to learn tools, and the tools then we can own to make our lives better. We're not going down there to get answers about something that happened to us in the past. Like, that wasn't even in my head when I went in. Like, show me a trauma, and when I understand the trauma, I can be happy. I was like, give me tools to be a better person, to live my life in a better way. For every day I can be more competent. Every day I can contribute more to a conversation or a relationship or an interaction with a person. I crave that. Absolutely crave it. And that's the point you're making there. It's the same kind of thing. Like, you're developing skills and tools to empower yourself, as opposed to being a victim and show me whose fault it is. Who stole my lunch money when I was a kid? And please, I'm not trying to undermine the impact that previous trauma can have on your life. It's very, very profound, as we spoke about earlier on. However, at the end of the day, based off everything we just spoke about today, it's your responsibility. There's a clip I shared of you saying this before. It might not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. And
because you said this to me recently as well, about, like, we're kind of understanding it more, although it's still fucking really difficult. The process, rather than the outcome. And you're just trying to say, like I said, have better tools and understand the process is what it's all about. And you're really just trying to be better kind of day to day. And again, it's just taking that responsibility, regardless of whether it's your fault or not. But it is the everyday mundane things. Yeah. And that's never going to really change, because it's all there ever is now. Although we're working towards the future and the past has happened, it is just now constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to clarify something for all my hundreds of millions of thousands of fans out there. I'm a little bitch with this a lot of the time. Like, I have awareness around it, which makes it all the more painful, but I'm still early in this journey trying to actually implement this stuff. I'm trying really hard, but like, I have many, many days where I'm a little bitch and I get caught up in all the oh, this is awful. Now, I never stop, and it's one thing I will high five myself for. I never stop. There's never a time when I'm like, I'm not going to work today. I'm not doing this today. I'll always do the thing, but quite often I feel shit because I'm caught up in this externalizing of bullshit. And I said this before, like, you help put me back in, Jill helps put me back in. Some of the systems I've now built for myself helps put me back in. Training helps put me back in, which is why I'm such an addict for this stuff, where I can build more systems to help keep me in line. Because for me, that's the first arrow. That's never going to change. The things that are making me feel shit are never going to change. So now the systems are the second arrow that we spoke about earlier on. I'm trying to build better ways to pull myself out. I can't trust my own head to do it. So how do I build the systems in? And sometimes I get lazy and don't do the systems. Then I feel a bit shit, and then I start going, I start moaning like a little bitch. So again, I'm not on here pontificating or preaching, but I'm having the conversation, and I'll have the conversation for the next 100 years, if I live that long, with you, with anybody who listen on the podcast, with anybody who wants to consume this stuff, because this is the process for me. Like, this is going to trigger me again to, going to finish this podcast, and then I'm going to go back to the systems again and have a good day and do my best today and all the simple things. If I don't do this for 3 or 4 weeks, I'm deeper into shit. So I just think this is a forever process.
And it's interesting you're saying that, because I've been off coffee for the last 6 weeks, and there's a system that I would throw in and not drink coffee for a while. I wouldn't be a big coffee drinker, once, maybe twice a day if things get a little bit more coffee. But what I'm finding over the last 6 weeks, that I'm sleeping better, which is fair enough, but I'm having deeper dreams that are somewhat fucking psychedelic. Like, it's unbelievable some of the dreams I'm having. I can feel viscerally what the hell's going on in the dream. I don't necessarily understand all of them, but like, there's a system for me to build more awareness. It's actually beginning to now change my relationship potentially with coffee, and what I use it for and why I use it for me in the future. And like, I've drank coffee for the last, 10, 15 years. A lot of times, certainly for the first 50%, 60% of that time, I never even thought about it. I was like, I just drink coffee. And now I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm relying on coffee. What does it make me do? Why do I have to do it? The first couple of days of me giving up coffee was pure habit. I didn't want it, but I was like, I go to the coffee shop. What do I have to do here? Like, it's just pure habit. So what I'm trying to say is, like, as you're saying there, I'm a bitch as well. I don't make the right decisions every single day, but I amn't stopping. I'm allowing myself to make mistakes, to feel like shit, and not do what I know I should do on some days. But I'm trying to be more consistent. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to build more awareness and use my experience of life to be better today, to be better tomorrow. And I think if you just keep itching and edging away at that and reflecting and trying to be better, space of a year, a space of 5 years, a space of 10 years, and we've seen the benefit ourselves from just doing this. I think you can transform a lot of things in your life. And again, it's not about the outcome, which we keep going back to. Like, it's just to be better. It's just so you're in the middle of the process and you're able to be better for today. It's mad, man. It never fucking stops. It never fucking stops.
And that's why your perspective is important, because like, all these people say, love the process, and like, the process is so fucking shit. But you can change your perspective around that process. And like, as you said, I'm just off the back of a 7 week, I think it was 7.5 weeks in the end, but no coffee as well. And now it's so funny. My relationship with coffee is completely different. I view it as something completely different. It's not I never used it as a crutch, but now I'm conscious around my consumption of coffee. Why am I drinking this? Do I actually want this cup of coffee right now? And this is like almost a subconscious thing now, which is amazing. But it took a bit of time to get to the point where it's now subconscious. But before, it was mindless. Like, you having a coffee? Yeah, I'll have a coffee. But now I'm like, why am I having that coffee? Brian O'Hengisa would speak about this with mindful eating as well. Like, look at the food. Like, why am I eating this food? And we should do this with everything. It's hard. It really is hard. But you do, like, you're consciously doing a coffee fast now, because you know you're going to have an outcome. But it's more about every single day changing your relationship with that thing that you're doing. So it's not about that I've 6 weeks off coffee and I felt great for 6 weeks, right? And I'm back on the coffee. It's now about every single day I think about, and you can have a coffee or you can not have a coffee, but it's your decision.
And it's interesting because it is like somewhat painful, we'll say, to give up coffee, particularly if you are reliant on it, or it's what you've always done, or even giving up alcohol or dropping body fat or building a business. I think it was Cam Haines that said it was like, if you can learn to love the pain, you learn to love your life. And it's amazing. As in, like, love the pain. So whenever's difficult, it's like, yeah, fucking, let's love it. Like, because the idea is that, again, that first arrow, that pain of life is inevitable. It doesn't mean you have to learn to love the fucking pain of someone dying. That's a huge thing. But the everyday mundane pain that we get of just existing, can we learn to love it? And that's why I get now with like Conor O'Keefe, Damian Brown. They do these big, massive world adventures. Like, so Damian Brown came back from rowing across the Atlantic by himself from New York to Galway, 116 days, something mental. It's like, why the hell would you do that? I kind of get it. It's so fucking difficult. He's going to be nothing but darkness for most of those 116 days. And if he can get through that, he's fucking better. He appreciates more things. He's literally had to do things that have put him outside of his comfort zone that he'd never have to do. Like, he just learns so much about himself and about life and learns to love the pain. That's like, yeah, I can accept everything now because that, like, it's just that first hour is constantly there. So that's what I think. Last time we were on this podcast, I was saying to you about doing a time study and getting clearer and stuff. I've done a time study. I got clearer. I gave up coffee. I'm training better. Like, bit by bit, it's becoming a little bit clearer. I want to keep on this path. I want to go a little bit deeper. So that's what I'm saying about Cam Haines and learn to love the pain. I want to start to go and search for this pain. I want to start to go and look for this actively myself, and not just from a business perspective, but a physical perspective, or put myself a bit more in uncomfortable situations and be like, yeah, that's fucking pressure is a privilege. Learn to love this. Let's stay with this. Come on, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Adapt to it, survive it, and ultimately be better because of it. That's what I want to do, like, forever. I mean, we talked about this about bow hunting. What's our plan? 3 to 5 years. Give us it.
Are you putting us on the fucking spot
yeah,
here?
Too right.
We're accountable here now. This podcast seems to just pull out these challenges for us. This is not so much of a challenge. I have been, because I'm a Rogan head, because I like watching Joe Rogan, as the people who say, and it is. It was where I first kind of understood the concept of, because I had been hunting before. We'll wrap this up now shortly. I've been hunted before, not bow hunting. And for me, the experience was so primal, forgive the pun, and it gave me such an appreciation for many, many things. Number one, the connection with the earth. Again, this is going to sound very Hallmark. Number two, such a gratitude for like the animal and the food it provided, and seeing how it built communities were built around this, and it was all so wholesome. It was none of this trophy stuff and for Instagram and all that kind of crack. Every single decision that was made, with the intent behind it, speaking of intent, was we are going to support our community. We're going to be grateful to the animal. We're culling the herd, so it's important for the ecosystem, for that herd. The herd will do better when we remove certain animals from it, etc., etc. Some people who don't like hunting will view these as excuses. To be honest with you, you haven't a fucking clue what you're talking about, because I experienced this in the most raw way on the plains of Africa. I wasn't a tourist. I happened to be with this group of locals. And it was the most incredible experience ever. And I'd always had an interest in the outdoors and hiking and shooting, not shooting people or anything like that, but shooting targets and stuff. And it kind of brought it all together with this incredible, wholesome, emotional experience for me. So I was already interested. And then I started to consume Rogan's content and I found out about bow hunting. And it's an even more primitive way of doing that. You have to, as I explained to you earlier on, everything is super enhanced. It's 1,000 times more difficult than hunting with a rifle or anything else. You have to get so much closer to the animal. You have to understand the animals. You really develop a relationship with the animals. So there's a lot of emotion involved in this. And in my belief, not everybody's going to hunt. So this whole argument of, well, we can't all hunt our food and blah, blah, blah. I don't like the idea of industrial farming. I don't like it. But what am I going to do? Most people who say that still get down to the supermarket and buy their food, me included. So I don't have a solution for that problem. But what I do know is, the idea of going and being able to even just have an experience once or twice of hunting my own food, to feel what that feels like, is very empowering for me. So disagree with me on your own principles if you want, but this is how I feel about this kind of stuff. So what I've always said I'd like to do is, even if it's not about the animal or the hunt or whatever, I'd like to experience that. What it's like to go out with a couple of people who you're really close with and live among these animals, track these animals, bow and arrow, and try and do one of the most difficult things there is to do in that field, and probably fail, but try. But what really excites me is the discipline it will take, and the person I will need to become to even be able to go on that trip. I need to be way fitter and stronger than I am now, because like, you're out there for 6 or 7 days. If you do happen to, you have to carry all your own gear. If you do happen to bring something down, you have to pack all that meat out. Nothing gets wasted. So you're talking like hundreds of pounds of stuff you have to pack out. You have to understand how to track. You have to understand the equipment. You have to have the discipline to practice your shooting for like years before you're even close enough to being good to going out there. So I've no misconceptions in my head about what this is, and that excites me. So it's like a medium to long-term project. I remember sending you the voice note, but I'm going to start building those tools now. The endurance in the mountains, the ability to hike and pack and understand the terrain and nature. I've reached out to Mr. Conor O'Keefe, who would be way more of an expert in those environments than me, to start the process to load myself up on going rucks and stuff like that, to get used to the environment and camping and all that kind of stuff. Reached out to you. You seemed really excited by the prospect as well. So in the next couple of months, I'm going to coordinate with Conor. We're going to start practicing. I've also said it to my dad as well, so my dad's now accountable on podcast too. He's very interested too. And just to start slowly building the skills that we'll need. We may never do it, but we will do it. Even if we don't, 95% of this is the process is going to take us to get to a point where we could do something like that. And I like the idea of that. So that's the challenge. 3 to 5 years, we're going to go and do a bow hunt. Whether we actually hunt something or not is irrelevant. It's the process of everything that's going to take to get us to the point where we could potentially do something like that. And that just really excites me. All the different moving parts in that really excite me, because at the end of it, you're going to be just a better version of yourself. And like, I know Cam Haines talks about this a lot as well. His day is built around conditioning his body to do all of these things. But the fact that he's doing that makes him just a much better all around, more competent person in general as well. So I really like the idea of that.
I think that's the whole point. To be able to do something like that successfully just requires a huge amount of skill, sacrifice, and ultimately practice over those 3 to 5 years, you know? And like I said, I think you're better across the board for doing it. I'm better across the board for doing it. And it's about, I think, understanding the power that we do have to go after these things, you know? To embrace the process, the pain, love the pain, love the pain, love the pain. Like, because you get this from a physical standpoint playing GA. You've no problem killing yourself on the pitch, regardless, because what's that feel like? I mean, do you love it? Do you search for it? Do you even think about it?
That's a great, because I was going to say there's a bit of a dichotomy in what we're talking about here, because if we decide that we're going to be better as an outcome of this pain, then we are outcome focused. It's not about the process. Like, for example, I'm going to get to what I actually believe here in a sec, but if we decide, right, I'm going to be a better person for going through all this pain, we don't love the pain. We're still just getting through the pain to get to the outcome. So it's still outcome based. However, that what you just mentioned about GA there, training and stuff like that for me is a necessary evil. I don't love training. I don't love it. And I'd love to love it, but I don't love it. But playing games, the really hard games, the really tough, physical, slog games, when I'm in that 60, 70 minutes, I'm alive. Like, alive. Jill often says it to me, like, I walk out on the pitch there and the shoulders go back, the chest goes out, the fists get clenched. I'm alive. I feel the blood coursing through my veins. I feel the power in my body. And what is that? Why? I'm in a place that's difficult, but it's rewarding for me for so many different reasons, because it feels right. I'm stressing my body. I'm competing. It just all feels right to me. And it's some of these games are really, really difficult, and you're 40 minutes in, you're absolutely spent, and you've 20 minutes to go, and it's really important, and you don't want to let your teammates down, but you don't want to let yourself down. And if you can rise to that challenge and embrace that pain, you start to love that feeling of, I am in agony right now, but good, because I'm dealing with it. I'm riding this wave. I don't know what it is. It's different than training, like a brutal training session. Like, I just want this to fucking end. I still can't get into the mindset. And I know some people can, like you mentioned, Conor and Damien. When they're in training, they're in the mindset of, this is the thing. I'm doing the thing. Cam Haines, 27 miles before breakfast, whatever. I'm doing the thing. I still can't get into that mindset. But in a game, that's a great point.
But that's good, though. The fact that you can get it in a game is indication you can get it in any avenue of your life.
Potentially.
It's just one thing that, it comes a bit easier to you, quote unquote. But the fact that you can love that pain means that we can love the pain in any aspect of our life. It's fucking difficult, but we can. I think, go back to, we keep talking about the arrow, the first arrow and the second arrow. Life is that first arrow. We're all going to get shot. So we may as well step forth into it with more awareness, with better systems, better conversations, and then with grander goals, because we're going to be better as a result. And then that second arrow, that narrative, that story is much more empowering. We're taking that responsibility at least, and we're not shirking away from life. I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And that's what we get to our conversations, our friendship. I feel fucking much more energized. And I feel better for spending time with you, because we have these conversations. And again, it's making me better. And I want to do more things in my life that make me better. And I think we're at a stage of our lives that requires new pain. That requires more difficult pain. So let's fucking rock and roll and run into it.
Yeah. Embrace the suck. Who says that? Embrace this Jocko thing? I don't know.
Probably potentially.
Look, we'll wrap it up there. I think we could keep going, which we generally do.
We should really start doing these a bit more regularly. I think we're getting it clearer.
I told you we're doing one every month.
Was that a month since last time?
I think it's about a month, yeah.
All right.
Now, when I released this, because the last one I released was the one me and you, I've been shirking on the podcast, as I mentioned.
Okay.
I have one more to release in between this, 2 more to release in between this, so this will be out.
It'll be a lot longer than a month then. It makes no odds because we're doing it now, so yeah.
I'll get it out next week. But yeah, once every month, if the people are happy. But we're going to do it anyway. Once a month we'll do another one of these, because like we do this anyway, and I find it useful. People listen. The feedback is really good of these episodes, so people are obviously listening. It's just our ramblings, but
I also think because this started originally with 75 Hard.
Yeah,
we got more accountable. I think since then as well, our mindsets have kind of shifted a bit. We've been taking better quality of action, although still fucking plenty of shitty days. And I think as we say more, as we do more, I think it just allows it to develop.
Really interesting thing before we go on 75 Hard. So do you need to answer that?
No, go ahead.
I heard someone talking about it the other day, and they said like it's astounding. I don't know who's doing the stats on these, but like 95% of people who finish that, it's so extreme that 95% of people who finish just default back to their original life. I remember I did that for a week or two.
Yeah,
because it's so extreme, and we acknowledge that. That's why we did the 60.
That's interesting you say that, because maybe go back to psychedelics. That's what happens with an awful lot of people.
Yeah,
it's such an extreme experience that people don't integrate afterwards,
because
it's no problem doing a weekend. It's no problem doing a challenge.
That must have fixed me.
Yeah.
It was so extreme. It must have fixed
me. But then, like, well, what can you take into the rest of your life? What's actually realistic for you to do and implement? And that's just really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And hence why we keep having these conversations. We don't have the fucking answer. But we do want to know more. We do want to do more. We do want to be better. So we're not going to stop answering these questions.
I would propose that the day we stop having these conversations is the day we're doing something wrong, because we think we figured it out. If we keep having these conversations where we, as you can tell, we have no fucking clue what we're talking about, that's a good sign.
We'll never stop having these conversations. I just know for a fact, because even the conversation we have now, like, we're never, ever going to, quote unquote, be there or make it, because there's no fucking there.
Well, if you start organising events without me and stop calling me on a day-to-day basis.
You're too busy for me, man.
Yeah, fair. Mr. Loughlin, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you, sir.
Same time next month.
Yes.
I'll see you then. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic week.
Talk to you soon.